And so then we subletted it immediately. We subletted 2,000 square feet for $550 a month. And so $450 a month for 6,000 something square feet of just adult playground. And the rest we kind of built from there. And it was very much tribal, very much do it yourself. Our medicine balls were just play it again sports basketballs that we had cut open and put sand in. I mean, we were very much just doing it day by day.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Jason Skeesick, who's going to talk about enjoying the journey of life while becoming successful. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. While you're there, you can sign up for a monthly email where I share the best articles I read this month, let you know about upcoming episodes, and share a little wisdom. You can also listen to coaching calls under the Coaching Calls tab. I also share the most interesting articles I read every week on Facebook at facebook.com/Richer Soul. And there's also a Facebook group where you can ask questions and interact with other listeners. Today, I want to share a short story on value. If I had an iron bar, the raw value of the iron bar might be $1,000. If I turned it into horseshoes, it might be worth $250. If I used it to create sewing needles, it might be worth $70,000. If I used it to build precise springs and gears for a fancy watch, it might be worth $6 million. If I used it to manufacture precision laser components, it could be worth $15 million. See, your value isn't in the base of what you do. It's about how you make use of that and how you present it to the world. So the question is, what can you do to provide more value? Maybe it's a different place or a different situation or a different way. But somehow we can bring massive value. And when you figure it out, that's when things open up. Part of that is having a team who helps you create success. Clearly, me making horseshoes would be pretty easy. Me making something that was high precision value that goes into laser components, I probably need a team of people. I need resources. And so those are the things you need to bring into there. Now, let me ask you a question. Are you enjoying the journey? Or are you like me when I was younger who said, I'll be happy when? I screwed this up for so long. That's why it took me longer to achieve what I wanted. That said, I still had fun and I did enjoy the journey. That's the key. We're going to have good. We're going to have bad. The key is just to get back up, take the next step, improve by a tiny little bit, and then let it compound and keep compounding over time. It is incredible what progress can look like. That's what we're going to talk about with our guest, Jason Skeesick. He is a U.S. Army veteran, a coach, and an entrepreneurial evangelist. He's a father, husband, fighter, and a carrier of heavy things. His company is Spear and Clover, and they help businesses with passionate leaders, talented teams, and strong playbooks go from contenders to Dynasty Organizations. He also leads the Spear and Clover Mastermind group, a large group of like-minded entrepreneurs united in helping one another impact the world with their unique visions. Let's meet Jason. Welcome to Richer Soul, Jason Skeesick. It's great to have you join us today.
Oh, Rocky, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here. And just any way that I can find you on the other end of my Zoom, I'm happy to be there.
And I'm excited to learn from you today. Let's start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
That is a great question. And I think you probably know some version of the answer. And that is, in school, I got very, very little financial education, at least before I pursued a finance degree in college. But what I will say is I grew up, my dad's a blue collar guy. He's a plumber. We had our uncles owned a plumbing business that was very successful in Chicago, and he did very well. But he very much taught me a hard work ethic of trading your time for money to deliver the lifestyle that we wanted. As far as school, believe it or not, Rocky, I know it's going to be hard for you to imagine, but I was removed from regular school when I was in first grade because I was a lot of trouble in the classroom. I was very ADD. And so my mom found a way to get me put into a full-time behavior disorder school that was about 45 minutes away from the house, and it had no summer break. And so it was called Bridgeview Extended Day School. And I was about 8 years old, and it was K through 12. So of the 40 students, I was by far the youngest, and some of them were gang members and very serious behavior disorder high schoolers. And so I had a very unique opportunity and challenge of sort of figuring out my way through that world, which I think is what helped me to think a little more clearly on my feet and speak more clearly on my feet. And then also got to study on my own pace. But as far as how it affected my money relationship, my parents were always smart with money from the perspective of we never struggled. We were upper middle class is what I would probably classify us as. And my dad worked his tail off, leaving the house an hour away from the city to be to the city by 6, work for 12 hours, then come home and be at the baseball game, be the baseball coach, and then go home and finish the basement himself. I mean, just absolutely just painted a picture of just absolute work ethic in my house. But from a financial perspective, that was not something that was very commonly discussed.
That's interesting that he worked that much and still had time to be with you and to be a dad.
I think if you asked him, I think they were so young compared to me. I just have our daughter Lucy isn't even 2 yet, and I'm 40. And they were in their young 20s at the time I'm talking about. And I just know, I think that what he knew was that if he worked hard, he could provide for his family. And I think that what he knew is that a good dad shows up at the baseball game. And so we went to church, we volunteered, we were at the homeless shelters, we were in the things. And he moved us an hour away from where he worked because it was the number one place in America to raise a child at the time. And so he was doing the actions that he knew were, and by the way, my mom too, we just haven't talked about her, but my mom absolutely doing the same, taking the actions that I think he was able to provide the best possible life for us. And I think in that way, he did an unbelievable job. I just don't think anybody ever taught him about money or anything to do with, ways to live in which you weren't trading your life for money.
And I think that's very true. I mean, that's generational. If it doesn't happen in your family, and then if it doesn't get passed down, it just doesn't occur. And that's not outside the norm at all. And most people are not taught about money, so most adults can't teach their kids about money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's where, for me, the switch, genuinely the switch, and I know that there's millions of people that would have this answer for you, is reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. In the early 2000s, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it was almost my story. or it felt that way as I was reading it. And it was so obvious on its face, just reading that book and just the very core concept of it, that this person had a mentor and a father, one of whom was trading his time for money and was very good in his field and yet so couldn't seem to get ahead. And the other was an entrepreneur and seemed to be floating effortlessly through life, albeit taking responsibility for his responsibilities, and seeming to just create wealth for himself and for the people around him. And that changed me forever, reading that book.
How did it change you?
It opened up a portal to a universe that previously didn't exist, Rocky. I didn't know. I knew that there were people called stockbrokers, and I knew that there were things called stocks and portfolios. I'm a smart guy, but I didn't know it'd be like if I asked you, what you think about the development of AI. You're aware of it, but because you don't work in the field or understand necessarily, and I'm not trying to tell you don't, but you get my point. Like, if you don't understand it, it's almost like, well, that's for other people. And so this idea of investing seemed to be for other people, or this idea of even owning your own business. It wasn't something that I was around very much. But the one thing that they both did for me, and I think it was a result of the same thing, my mother especially, is both of them always put me in situations where there would be opportunities and challenges. I was always in sports. I was always in classes and events. I did plays, all sorts of stuff, always something. And then the other thing is they always let me know that if I wanted to be capable of achieving something, that I could. And so because I was armed with that, reading that book, opening up the idea that someone could stop trading their time for money and create wealth through systems and entrepreneurship, I was equipped to see that and say, I can do that.
So I remember reading that book and I got the concepts and I were like, this all makes sense. What I couldn't figure out is how to implement it. How do I do this? And for me, that was a struggle for a long, long time until I finally figured it out. And now it's like second nature to me. Now I don't, but until you did it, and you tried it and you went through the motions, it was very difficult for me to just like, okay, I get this, but how do I do this?
I think, as you're even saying that, I've never thought of this, but one of the things that has made me a later bloomer as an entrepreneur, why I wasn't maybe more successful younger, and I could give you a few other than wasn't ready. But one of the big ones is I've never been able to accept anybody's definition of anything. I have to figure it out for myself, or at least that's my nature. I've gotten better at listening to mentors that have been there where I want to go and books that have acclaim and make sense. But for most of my life and leading till now, it's very difficult for me to take somebody else's definition. I want to go do it. I want to taste the food for myself. I want to try the system for myself. I want to run the ad myself. And that can be as much of a gift as it can be a curse, as I'm sure you're aware.
I am very much, but the reality is we all need help, and it's finding the right help that I think is the most difficult part. There's plenty of people out there who help. What I have found, I think, is the majority of them, they're all being very nice and they're trying to help, but they don't really get it. And so while they're trying to help, they're sending you down the wrong path. And I think that's why so many people get sent down the wrong path. And one day they wake up and go, oh, gee, time for change.
Yeah, I remember being at my very first mastermind, and I'm not going to say who because it's not 100% positive, but I did have a very positive, life-changing experience. First in-person mastermind, they rented a vineyard on a hill in San Diego and near the mountains. And the main guy, one of the main guys, is talking to me one-on-one. And I was like, I've been running this gym for this amount of time. What do you think I should do? And he's like, you need systems. And I just remember writing down the word systems and then and he wasn't able to tell me exactly what that meant for me. And so it was probably 3 years later when I found out what that really even meant. And so there was this thing where he was like, well, you need systems. And actually, in hindsight, I think he probably had systems. He just wasn't equipped and hadn't given it the thought to meet me where I was at and say, what I mean by systems is instead of writing an email 100 times, you write one really great email and then you put it into play like this, and you use this technology or whatever it may be. If you want the bathroom cleaned at 11 o'clock every day, then you have this checklist or whatever it may be. But he just said systems. And because of that, I was like traveling the earth trying to smell out systems. And it just, I couldn't put it together as quickly. And I think part of that was me. And part of that was him not breaking it down in such a way that he could meet me where I was at.
E-Myth, Clockwork, Traction. Your 3 systems books.
Yeah, those are good books.
And they will show you how to do it. And yeah, I truly believe in systems. I think you should have systems in every single part of your life, from the basics of, when I wake up in the morning, there's a system so that when I walk downstairs, the coffee is already ready for me. I don't need to touch a button. I don't need to wait. And I've automated certain things that happen. Every morning I do certain things, and in a sense, it's a system. This is how I run my morning. And like with kids, it just amazes me how few people plan the night before for the morning of, okay, tomorrow morning, you're going to school. Is your lunch ready? Right? Is your book bag where it needs to be? Are your shoes by the door? Like, pick out your clothes. What is everything? So that in the morning, you get up, and even if you're 5 minutes late, you just grab and you go. There's processes in place. This is how we do stuff.
Yeah, the military gave me that for sure, and even to the extent your listeners may get this, you may get this. When I did CrossFit has a competitive alley that you can go down if you'd like, and you can do these CrossFit competitions. And I love doing the things that I'm doing, but like you, Rocky, I also analyze. I think about how I'm doing the things that I'm doing, and then I break it into steps. And so I'll just never forget, like a perfect example of that is in the military, you do this all the time with all sorts of different things. But even the way that I would get on and off of a rower to get my partner on and off of a rower, like had steps. You do this, you do that, you do this, I grab this, and then boom, you go. And so treating life as like a sport almost, where you're saying like, I wake up, I brush my teeth, I do this, I do that, I do the other thing. I don't know if you're like this, but I have like one drawer of long sleeve shirts, one drawer of short sleeve shorts, and a drawer of pants. I don't fold them. I don't order them. I reach in and I pull them out. And if you've seen me on screen enough, it's almost all black or olive drab, and it all goes together. So, and most of it has my logo on it these days, or one of my logos. And so I just grab and go, and that's been a part of the system.
So when I worked in corporate, I had suits and they rotated. So every day you grab from the left, you put it in the right. So you've got a rotation, white shirts, so I don't have to think. And then it's, hey, what color suit? All right, grab a tie, grab a pair of shoes. They all match. You don't have to worry about all this stuff. And again, these are all useless decisions that we use so much mental energy on that is just kind of a waste of time. And if you can put in processes and if you track what you do, then it's much easier the next time you do it. So that's what I have found. And I mean, even our family events, like Thanksgiving is a repeatable event. So
I love that.
Every year I just open up the Excel sheet. I copy last year's Thanksgiving meal into this year. We make a couple changes because after last year's meal, I make a couple notes and then literally I can plan it in 5 minutes. Now I don't do events like I used to. But literally, there's still one big event we do for 100, 150 people. Wow. It takes me all of about 7 minutes to plan it. Right?
I believe it. Yeah.
And because it's all, we just copy over, make a few changes, put a little buzz into this year that's a little different, and off you go. And you don't have to have meeting after meeting and decisions and all of this crazy stuff that I think people do. It's all about systems.
Where does that come from in you, do you think? Because that is not something that was natural to me. Was that natural to you, or did you learn that somewhere?
It's natural to me. That is who I am. And I didn't realize what a gift that was and the value that had.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah. I just didn't know that. And it caused me to fight against the system. Because I would look at things and go, if you make these 3 changes, everything would be 10 times faster. And people would get mad that you said these things.
I would get in trouble for that same bus driver I mentioned earlier. I would get in trouble for trying to tell her the right directions because she would go the wrong way. And I'd be like, no, you want to go that way. What are you doing? You're stupid. So I have a little bit of that, but I never had the discipline, or I don't even think it's discipline. I think it's the understanding that these systems would lead you to where you wanted to go. It took me going to the military to find it. But you and I, we've talked now 10 times, maybe even less. But every time we speak, I can't help but think how different we are and how similar we are. And it just fascinates me because I really enjoy talking to you. And I find we agree on so much more than we disagree. And I just think it's just such a fascinating, continuous conversation with you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that you mentioned before we hit record is that you have always pursued a passion for living. And so everything you do is because it was something you enjoyed.
Yes. And so this actually ties into what we were just talking about to some extent, because what I'm not capable of, and this is why I didn't succeed as a banker. I had a terrific starting job out of school as a commercial banker for one of the biggest banks, if not the biggest bank in the world, in the third biggest market. And I couldn't make myself bring my talents or my interest or my passion to this very big opportunity. But I couldn't stop myself from being passionate about this dusty little warehouse gym that we had started, a few months prior to me joining that business. And so what I've found is that, number one, before I ever knew I was an entrepreneur, like you just alluded to, I was into snowboarding. I worked at the snowboarding hill. I was into cars. I worked at the shop. I was into clothes. I worked at the mall, and on and on and on. I was into pool and poker. I worked at a casino and a pool hall. I mean, like, I genuinely was doing this. And the whole time I'm thinking, one day I'm going to make it big in corporate America. And it never occurred to me that I had this unbelievable gift of being passionate about this broad number of things and pursuing it like ruthlessly, to the extent where you couldn't have convinced me I wasn't going to one day be a professional pool player or a professional poker player or a professional snowboarder. And so what I've learned over time, fast forward till now, through many iterations, is that if I can shepherd the power of my attention span and passion towards things that will drive a positive result, like a business, then the results can be endless. They can be effortless and endless. Does that make sense?
It does. So I don't believe kids have ADHD like we think they do. I think the problem is they're bored out of their mind with stupidity of the world, and they want to go do what they love. And the reality is no boy wants to sit still in a classroom and learn subjects they might not be passionate about from somebody who's doing the wonk, 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 wonk at the front of the room. And I think teachers become overburdened and they don't want to deal with it either. And so we get stuck with these labels and these pathways that don't necessarily fit how at least boys behave.
Yeah, I think of globally of this 100-year problem is what I call it. And that is like basically since it's longer than 100 years, but since the Industrial Revolution, it seems like so many aspects of our culture, from medicine to education to work, we had this big increase in technology and output and quality of life and all of that stuff. And in order to make that work, we just crammed as closely as we could our lifestyle to try and match it. And so everybody has heard the trope of, school is essentially designed to create factory workers or office employees. And, the medical is essentially created to, solve a problem with a pill or whatever it is. And I think that ultimately we're now waking up as a culture because we've seen enough to say that, well, this just can't be true. It can't be true that 40% of kids can't sit through class because it's ADHD. No, you shouldn't have a one size fits all class because not everybody is the same and not everybody's going to have the same successes. And that's why, you see the tropes on social media of C students are managing A+ students because the C students are the entrepreneurs.
Yes, it's so true.
Yeah.
And it's funny how that has all come to be. And I don't know how you change society. I think it's much easier what we found is just to walk away and create your own path and don't worry about what everyone else is doing and just make it yours.
Yeah, I think there's a growing pursuit of sovereignty, Rocky. I think there's a growing number of people in one way or in many ways where they just say, hey, I'm a free thinker. That thing doesn't fit my outcomes. It's not even working towards the outcomes that I would want. And so I'm going to take my path a different way. And in some cases, that's a person. In some cases, that's a family. In other cases, you see it in, states in some cases. But it definitely is our responsibility as human beings to pursue solutions to the problems we want to solve that can actually get us where we're trying to go. You know what I mean? And I think so many people take a path that they were told to take. I have a client right now that I'm working with who's fantastic. I love this guy. And he did what winners do. Winners go to school and they get good grades and they do well in sports. He did that. Winners get a college scholarship to play on a team and they they go to law school or doctor or medical school or maybe mechanical engineering, whatever, right? And he did that, did well enough. Then they go to law school. He did that and they stay in shape. He did that. And then they get a great job at a great firm in a big market. He did that. And the whole time he's like, but I don't really actually want to do any of that. If I did all the things that winners do, why do I feel like a loser? And the answer is because you did them for this extrinsic value that really was not from you. And I think that, not to put ideas or words in his mouth, but I think that as he's learning that, the beauty of it is he's now armed with this incredible education and experience to now pursue those things that maybe he couldn't have achieved before.
Interesting. So let's shift gears a little bit. What got you into starting a gym?
Somebody asked me and I said yes. That's the short, funny answer. When I went into the Army, I had always been an athlete. I had never, ever once had any kind of trouble with my weight. I was a big kid. I wrestled at 187 in 7th grade. So I was 12 years old, 187 pounds, about 6'2". So a big boy, but I was never overweight. I go into the Army and in basic training, they teach you to eat as much as you possibly can in a very short period of time. It's like a famous part of basic training. But then what they don't tell you is after basic training, 8 weeks later, you go to it's essentially like community college. You go to what's called AIT. It's advanced something training, individual training. And the same biscuits and gravy are there and the same limitless eggs and steak and eggs and, potatoes and all that are there. And so I came out of basic training at 208. I came out of AIT 6 or 7 months later at like 275. I just totally ruined. I was working mid shifts too. So I was working from midnight to 8 in the morning, which messed up my endocrine system, messed up my circadian rhythm. And all of a sudden I had a weight problem. So I looked like a Magilla gorilla, big pink gorilla walking around. And so that was the first year of my service. And then I spent 5 years getting back on the path to fitness. What happened though, is I was accelerating on that path towards fitness, towards leaving the military. So I got out of the military and I was a hammer. I had been pulling cable by hand for 15 months straight, 12 hours a day. I was in great shape. And I had an understanding that my own self-worth would pay me dividends if I continued to invest in that physical discipline. And so I did. And we found CrossFit, immediately fell in love. I loved the nature of it. I had already basically been doing it uneducated. And we went to go join a CrossFit gym. And at that time in 2009, I guess, it was $220 to join the local good CrossFit gym. Well, that was not even in the realm of reason for me. And so I said, instead, let's go find a gym and let's just go open our own. So I've actually never belonged as a paying member to a CrossFit gym. And so we rented out a 7,500 square foot warehouse that was supposed to be $1 a square foot per month in Chicago, in Lincoln Park, adjacent to Bucktown and Wicker Park. So very good. It was on the 4th floor of a mostly empty old building that was owned by a family trust. And so instead of taking the place on the ground floor for $1,000 a month, that was 1,000 square feet, I just made an offer on the 4th floor, 7,500 square feet for $1,000. And they said yes, because why wouldn't they? They weren't going to rent it out ever. And so then we subletted it immediately. We subletted 2,000 square feet for $550 a month. And so $450 a month for 6,000 something square feet of just adult playground. And the rest we kind of built from there. And it was very much tribal, very much do it yourself. Our medicine balls were just play it again sports basketballs that we had cut open and put sand in. I mean, we were very much just doing it day by day.
Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. You figured out how to do it frugally. And business needs to be done frugally. You know, the funny thing, and we were chatting about this, I've noticed at my gym, and I go systematically 3 times a week. Again, there's a system for it. And over time, I'll see people come and go. Some people just constantly come and go. Some people will be there for 3 months. Some people will be there 6 months. It is a handful of people who are there year after year. The only exception to that rule that I've noticed in our gym is we have a bunch of significant seniors, like 70s, 80s, and they're always there. Now they're just sitting there on the bicycle, barely moving or doing whatever. I'm like, you know what? At least you're moving. So that's good. But people don't continue to show up over time. It amazes me.
Yeah, I think, the first thing I would tell anybody who has any interest in being fit is that you have to do something you enjoy. You have to enjoy it. And I would argue that the reason that those octogenarians, or I don't know how to say the 71, are sitting on those bikes is probably the value they're getting by going to the gym is the community. It's the culture. It's being around other people, because the alternative is like walking. They do walk through the mall as well, right? And so what I would say is there are different reasons why everybody does everything. You are a very system and process oriented person who also has a propensity to understanding that by delaying gratification, you can have a healthier, longer life. And by putting in these small, it just fits you that you would go 3 times a week forever and not stop, because why on earth would you? And I agree. But for me, I love the hang. I love jujitsu and I love CrossFit and I love football and I've done yoga. I would love Zumba. I love doing it together. I'm a very tribal community type of person. And so for me, I don't have to go to the gym. I get to go to the gym because that's where my friends are. And that's where the fun ideas are. And that's where the loud music plays instead of having to be at a dance club or something crazy. And so, that's for me. My advice would be whatever that means for you, find something that you'll enjoy doing, because especially if there's some skill involved, because you're in pursuit of something that is evolving and interesting and fun to you. So you can sort of shepherd your attention towards those things that you'll enjoy, whether it's water polo or golf. I don't care.
Do you think most people who go to the gym don't enjoy it? Well, I guess they don't show up at the gym then. They want to, but they don't.
I think that there are some people, I wouldn't venture a guess because I've never owned what I would call a traditional gym. And so the people I work with, by the way, of all ability types and all backgrounds, from anywhere to anywhere, not just unbelievable athletes or anything, they stay because they love it. But I do think when you talk about the fitness, like a health studio, like a Gold's Gym or a Lifetime or something, I do think that there are some people who just know, I don't want to do this, but I need to because I want to look this way or I want to feel this way. And so they basically take their medicine. It's the spoonful of penicillin or whatever, they're taking their medicine. The cod liver oil is actually the right phrase for that. But, and I don't have that ability. I just don't. I don't have the ability to grin and bear it. I would much rather find an alternative that I enjoy, that I can find some depth to. which is why, CrossFit or jujitsu are so appealing to me, and previously rock climbing, because it's infinite. There is no finish. I can always learn to be better. I can always collaborate and learn from somebody else. And so to me, it's just a beautiful and wonderful art form, as opposed to something I have to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday. To me, I couldn't live that way.
I've come to love it.
I bet.
I didn't start that way.
Yeah.
But when you get the results, then that's what it comes down to, right?
Yeah. It's like your area of expertise. It's like money. I would learn to love money, or anyone would learn to love money, if every time we took that action, 6 months later, we got the favorable result, or whatever time domain and whatever result. If you have that happen a lot, it's great. But this is why when people get burned, they get reticent, whether it's in finances, whether it's in if they get hurt doing basketball or CrossFit, or if they get hurt in a relationship. There's this reticence that gets built. Go ahead.
I think the reason people get hurt is they go beyond their limits. Mm-hmm. So when I go to the gym, I go below my limits. And actually, there was a study that actually talked about that the people who do best long-term athletic-wise are the ones who don't go all out. You stay below your limits, because if you get hurt, you're done. And I don't think people realize the consequences of that. They always go beyond where they should go.
Yeah, and I would agree with that one part of the principle, or that one principle. I would agree with that. What I would say, though, is to shift this to finances slightly. Warren Buffett started playing at a certain stakes level, and then he ratcheted it up as his ability and his bank account grew. And so, where as a performance-based coach, philosophically, what I would say is, I agree with what you're saying, but I would say that the people who struggle are the people that stay at the, and maybe that's what you want, is just to be functional, and that's fine. I'm not addressing this to you. I'm just saying that you can seek performance by increasing ability and then staying below your maximal there. And so that's where you see long-term progress, is when you're pursuing increased performance, but you're doing so in a way that's not going to blow you apart. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. Jiu-jitsu and CrossFit, not the best places for that, but I understand the concept, and I certainly have helped many people that follow that method. And
it's not that you are staying stagnant. You are definitely growing, but rather than throwing, 20 extra pounds on the bar, you throw 10. And, maybe if you realize that it's set number 8, you're starting to struggle. If you don't have support, you don't do 9 and 10. You just call it a day. And I just find some people always go beyond their limits, get hurt, and then we struggle with it. And then, And I think that it's the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And so how many people are inconsistent in life? And when they do the thing, they go all out, and their Thanksgiving is the biggest thing ever, and it's a huge failure. Whereas your Thanksgiving is the same as it was last year, just improved at the few holes. I mean, it's the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And so at the end of the day, the real challenge is the meta-analysis, is realizing that, and then starting to make changes there. And so that kind of brings us to the topic of constantly improving. So it's that self-improvement. And, if you can, and this is what I don't think people realize, is if you can show up just a teeny tiny little bit better, you don't need to make massive change. You just need to make little change. And it's funny because I think recently I was just looking backward at some things, and then there were some pictures, and I'm thinking back to some things that I was doing, and I'm like, oh my God. Like, if I look back 10 years at who I was and who I am today, it is night and day. Yeah, I have had a child for 22 months, and I've never seen her grow, but she has. She's like 3 times the size that she was when I first had her. And I think that's sort of the same concept. And it's just something that we're not conditioned to see if we don't make it a habit of paying attention. And this leads us to, by the way, there's so much crossover in the personal and fitness and health to the financial and the business and the entrepreneurship, because it's just the simple thing of writing it down. You talk about having a spreadsheet for Thanksgiving. You talk about looking back 10 years, even at a photograph,
and going, and it'll remind you, oh, that's when I worked here and I did this, and this is what we were doing for vacations and da da da. And there maybe wasn't these huge change, black and white, changes, but you're a wholly different person now. And I just identify with that so much. I don't know that I even have anything to add other than that I'm seeing it in very much real time. It's like trying to watch the minute hand move on a clock. You can't really, but it's moving.
It is. And if you're not moving, then that picture won't change. So let's go to the opposite end, because you say that we should set and achieve big, hairy goals. Mm-hmm. So how do we do that?
Well, for starters, it's not even that you should. It's that we as humans are geared, some of us, to having a strong desire to do it. And the worst thing in the world is to have an ethic that's here and an outcome that's here. And so what I try to do is help reduce that dissonance by helping people to get to those goals. And so if you have a big, hairy goal, I will never be the one. If it ever sounds like I am, you're misunderstanding me. I'll never be the one that says you can't do it. You want to colonize Mars? I'm here for it. But ultimately, I think especially visionaries, people that are starting out on their entrepreneurial journey and they were born or have accrued this visionary trait. A lot of them are so good at picturing the mountaintop and so bad at understanding the path up the mountain. And so oftentimes it's a few short questions from hearing somebody's goals to watching them crumble under the weight of just no analysis or planning or preparation or anything. And so that can end there if you're not committed, but it shouldn't, because there isn't a mountain that's too high for us to climb. We just need to plan. We just need to plan and prepare and understand the actions that we have to take if we wish to sit on top of that mountain. And so to set and achieve big, hairy goals, we'll start by setting a goal. That's fine, whatever the goal might be. Although I will say, when I talk to somebody and they say, I want to make $100 million, or even if I want to make $1 million, I'm always a little skeptical because that's you picked somebody else's goal essentially, or you picked a goal you think you should. But when somebody tells me I want to be the greatest sportscaster that's ever lived, okay, now I'm listening. All right, there's something there. And so simply just understand what has to happen. You start at the goal and you work your way down from there. You break it into chunks. You want to make $1 million? Okay, well, you're going to sell $1 million thing. Are you going to win the lottery? Or are you going to sell $1 million $1 things, or anywhere in between? And then they say, I'm going to do that. Okay, well, how are you going to get that? And then we just go down the path from there. Very much, I'm sure, as you do with financial coaching. You're
reverse engineering the path up the mountain is basically Absolutely. What you do. And I find most people, they don't even pick a path. Like they follow whatever shiny object comes in front of them at the moment.
That's the worst part. Some of them try to go up one mountain and they can't pick the right path. Others want to climb Kilimanjaro today and Everest tomorrow, and then K2 the third day. And to that person, I say, you're standing in the same spot you were 3 days ago. And so, because they've taken one step towards Kilimanjaro, and then they take one step towards Mount Everest, and then they take one step towards K2. And so that's not even to say that that's wrong, but what it is it's lazy, because if you can't pick a goal that you actually are committed to achieving, then you shouldn't take any steps. But if you do take steps, take them towards the thing that you really want. And I don't think a lot of people even know what they really want because they don't take the time to think about it.
They don't. And if you're going to climb Everest, there's a good chance you're going to take some Sherpas. And what I find most hilarious in life is we keep celebrating the guy climbing Everest, yet the Sherpa's doing it with 1/10 of the gear and does it multiple times and doesn't even sweat. And yet we ignore them.
Yeah, we do. We kind of are them, Rocky.
It's funny how life is. When you sit down and you start looking at it, you realize these things.
I think the Sherpa comment's interesting because I think about it. I think about mountains a lot, and Sherpas, actually. It's funny. It's like that's my chosen metaphor for what we do. And sometimes I wonder, coaches of coaches is a thing. There's people that, but also Levi's is a thing. The be Levi's in the gold rush. That's a thing. And And so I do think a little bit about, and maybe this is not good podcast, I don't know, but I do think sometimes about like, well, should you go build a thing that's, you know, a manufacturing concern that makes this or whatever, or a website that has an app or something. And it's like, I actually really just like working with entrepreneurs. I like the climb. I like helping people on the climb. I like showing people how the techniques work and the strategies and helping them get out of tricky situations when they arise. And I get to iterate so much faster. But you're right. The Sherpa is very rarely celebrated. And I don't know if I know exactly why.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I love, and it's one of the things that's helped me in life, and I'm sure it's has helped you as well, is the power of being in mastermind groups.
Mm-hmm. So shout out to Scott Ferguson. He gave me this metaphor, but I love plus equals minus. I love being in having a mentor who's been further than I have and is helping me to get where I want to go. Equals, I love peer-to-peer masterminding. You were a guest at our recent one. You did an amazing job, and I appreciate your time. And my group loved it. And then minus, mentoring other people behind you on the path. And to me, those three things should be a part of not just entrepreneurs, but everybody's life, formally or informally. You know, for years, for many, many hundreds of years, this is your church leaders and your community organizers and things. But masterminding to me, it does so many things all at once. Number one, it takes people who maybe feel alone in what their pursuits are and puts them together so that they don't feel alone. And before the internet was what it is, that was a pretty powerful thing, because we've been doing this since Carnegie, right? And really forever. And so the second thing it does is, here we're all peers. We're going through similar struggles. You have this struggle. Well, I can solve that. And I have this struggle. Oh, well, I can solve that. And so you see this unbelievable dialectic, or whatever that would be in bigger numbers, of just being greater than the sum of your parts, because you're all there to support each other. And then the third thing that I can think of off the top of my head is, I'm not this way. I don't know if you are, but I don't view competition as any kind of a threat to me. I've always been friends with the local gym owners and the other people who help people the way that I do now. But some people do. And so when you do feel that way, it's nice to have a group where you know it's a safe place to talk about things that maybe your husband or wife doesn't understand, or the people that work for you, they don't know if it's a good idea or not. And so bringing it to peers where they can go like, hey man, we know you, we know your business, we love you, not a good idea for you. And then you go, oh shit, you're right. I've had that happen recently for me. I've had that happen recently in masterminds that I'm in. And it's a very powerful thing. But I think ultimately, like any human experience, it's very much driven by a sense of belonging and camaraderie, and sort of seeing your reflection in the people that you spend your time with.
And I think that's a big part of it, is when you're with the same people over time, they get to know you and how you behave, and can call you out for that and say, hey, you're doing this or that wrong, or your next step is incongruent with what you have told us that you want. And so that's a big part of it. I don't have any competition, so I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, I agree. I don't either. And I think we could probably find 20 people who think that they are our competition, but yeah.
Too bad for them. So let's just touch really base on, you have a mastermind called Spear and Clover. What's that all about?
Yeah. So as it's shaping out, I mean, we've only been in business since November of last year, so about 6 months or so. And as I was talking about before, we're still figuring out what it means. But Spear and Clover as an idea is this entrepreneurial lifestyle that's not just hard charging towards our goals, the spear, but it's also taking time to develop relationships and try new things and enjoy our lives now as we're living them. Because I don't know about you, I think we've even talked about this, but I don't want to enjoy my retirement when I'm 70. I do, but I want to enjoy my life now too. And I work very hard to be able to do that. And so the Spear and Clover symbol and the group are all about pursuing equally business, personal, and family success, and living into that ethic. And it's been a great time. For me, I'm just so much better of a human being when I'm responsible for helping others than I am when I'm just responsible for making my own money or building a thing that I think will be cool.
And I call that harmony. I think very few people live in harmony of all the different parts of their life in good song, I'll call it. You know, they're making music as they live. I always thought about retirement. Like when I was 21, I was going to retire at 38 with being a multimillionaire. And as time went on, like I'm at the point now where I'm like, I don't think I'm ever going to retire. I may not work anywhere near what I work now, but I will always work on my terms, doing what I love. And the underlying tenets are, number one, I'm constantly growing, because if I'm not growing, then I'm essentially retired to the field and put out to pasture, and I don't want that.
Yeah.
And just also at the point of being able to help others and to give back. And so that's always fun. And, you know, I get paid to do what I love. So that's really, really cool. And so I'm like, why would I stop doing this? And people are going to give me money. I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to keep enjoying it as long as I can. And since I do it on my terms, I don't have to worry about anything else.
I mean, that's a testament to a couple of things. It's a testament to your discipline to get yourself into a position where you can have that choice. And then also, for me, it's a turn of phrase, but I always tell people I retired in 2018 because that was the last time that I was doing anything that I didn't want to do because I had to make some money. I just don't do that. I don't do that anymore. And what you're describing is very similar to how I would describe my current life. And it's great. And why would I stop this? I don't want to be anywhere else, Rocky. I mean, I would maybe love to take my daughter to the beach. I'll do that later today. You know what I mean? But aside from that, like, where else would I rather be than exploring these ideas with you right now? You know, and after this, I'm going to have a call with a client, and I'm going to help him to understand some concepts that may change his life. Not to say that the concepts are that great or even mine, but he is building a business, and I might be able to help him go out and make an impact on the world. What's more exciting than that? You know?
I'm with you 100%. Is there anything we should have talked about today but didn't get a chance to touch on?
Man, I can't think of anything, Rocky, but I'll be back anytime you do, because I love talking to you. I think these are interesting and rich conversations. I think we have a different, just a slightly different angle of a very similar perspective. And I really appreciate anytime, recorded or not, that I get to talk to you, sir.
Thank you. It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
That is a great question. I think it's the Spear and Clover thing. I pursue ruthlessly my goals, but I do so while also enjoying my life. And so I guess that combined with looking for scarcity and limiting beliefs in myself as much as I am able in the moment. And when I eliminate those, I find myself to find much more opportunity and abundance.
You know, I think that's a mindset shift. I think a lot of people are taught you can enjoy when, not enjoy during.
Yeah. Have
fun on the journey, right?
It's because we have a system that wants us to collect garbage and, be a pipe fitter or whatever. And so we need to go like, no, don't worry about those dreams. You'll be fine. Like, you'll retire in 60 years.
What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Without clarity, you should never even start to turn up the volume. And what I mean by that is, as an entrepreneur, but really with any idea, I'm finding, spend as much time as it takes for it to be perfectly crystally clear and undeniable. An idea, a business, a record, a game, I don't care, before we worry about scale or impact or changing the world or any of that stuff, because it's the simplest ideas that are completely undeniable that when you do turn up the volume, everybody wants to dance.
You know, it's funny. A lot of times I see people and they say, I want to do this or I want to be this. And if you take a moment to ask if they've explored it, they haven't. They have in their head a vision of what that is. And when they actually achieve it, they're like, I wish I had known. So basically, had they had clarity up front and tested their idea before they did it, they could have saved a lot of life.
Yeah. And I can tell you right now that I have been in a 6-month period of concentrated struggle that is self-imposed ruthlessly, as much as I am able to tolerate, trying to find as many ways to improve what I want to do for a living and how I can help people to make it completely undeniable. And until I do, doesn't mean I'm not out there selling things and doing things. It's good stuff. But until I do, I won't turn up the volume. Because why? Because when I turn up the volume, I want the right people that hear it to go immediately, that's good. That's for me. I want that. And if it's not there yet, then what am I doing? Because like I said, I'm not going to make it to the NBA Hall of Fame. So I need to figure out how to make it to the Entrepreneur Hall of Fame.
There you go. If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
There's no such thing. So if your life is a book, there's no such thing as a bad page. But just make sure that the bad pages don't fill up the rest of the book. And so I don't care what you do in the short term to get where you think you want to go. And even if that changes over time, just make sure that you don't stay stuck in a bad chapter until the book is over.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's not that there aren't going to be bad pages, because there will be bad pages.
There have to be.
There have to be. Otherwise, there can't be good. You can't have good without bad. So
I think we could do a whole hour on our bad pages, Rocky.
That we could. If people would like to learn more about you and follow you, what is the best way for them to do that?
So I have a free group called Dynasty Builders on Facebook. I encourage you to join that community. I'm putting out live free training every single day. The purpose of it is to gain you $25,000 a month in revenue for free because my clients are up to $100,000 a month. And so we give out as much valuable content as we can on there for free every single day. Check us out on there. If you hate Facebook, you can find me at spearandclover.com.
And we will put links to that in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Rocky, thank you for having me.
You know, it's funny. I really did struggle with how to adapt the message of Rich Dad, Poor Dad into action in my life. They make it seem so easy, but for me, it was difficult in the beginning. Luckily, today, there are so many more resources to help you figure it out faster. And today, I get it, and I know how to do it. And it's just become easy, but that was because I took the first step and I just kept improving along the way. The key here is enjoy the journey because the destination's death. After all, that's when I'm going to stop trying. So I'm going to make sure at least it's a fun ride. What's the next step you can take to make a small change in your life based on what we heard today? Just go do it. That's it. It's that simple. Hey, if you enjoyed today's show, if you know someone who would as well, would you do me a favor and share it with them? I'd appreciate that. Or share it wherever you tend to share podcasts. Next week, we've got Becoming Flawsome with Christina Manlacani. She is the co-founder of Mind Valley. If you haven't checked out Mind Valley, check it out. They have a ton of programs about helping us to be better people. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.